Right now, superhero movies are at a crossroads. Marvel is struggling to get people to care again, while DC is just starting its new universe. Two upcoming movies, Spider-Man Brand New Day and Supergirl, might decide the future of both franchises. And in this video, I want to dive deeper into where each of these franchises is at currently, as well as how each of their own movies will shape the future of their respective franchise. Let's start with Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, now simply called Supergirl. Its predecessor, Superman, miraculously managed to lay the groundwork for the new DCU. But Supergirl needs to keep that momentum going if the DC universe is going to thrive. So what challenges does she face exactly? Supergirl needs to keep the hype for the new DCU alive. She needs to keep people excited for what's to come even after Superman. And whereas Superman had to fight against the preconceived notions that DC movies were trash, Supergirl faces a different but similar kind of problem. Now, we all know that in the present day, female superhero movies don't have the best reputation. And let's be honest, that's mostly Marvel's fault. And now Supergirl has to fight against the preconceived notions, mostly set by Marvel, that these types of superhero movies suck. It's not a secret that Marvel has been struggling a lot when it comes to making these types of movies, and unfortunately that has meant that they now have a bad reputation. I mean, The Marvels was their biggest failure at the box office ever. And I heard some people summarizing perfectly how general audiences feel about Marvel female lead movies in one sentence. People love Marvel heroes because they earned our respect. They hate Marvel female heroes because they demanded it. And I'm not gonna pretend like Marvel doesn't have beloved heroines, but unfortunately, those successes are mostly overshadowed by a string of projects that gave women lead superhero movies a bad name. And unfortunately, people always focus on the negative way more than the positive. And when the negative heavily outnumbers the positive, that's when we start to have a problem. And now, all of this affects Supergirl, because since audiences already have a preconceived notion that female superhero movies tend to suck, that bias may affect the performance of Supergirl as well. So just like Superman had to break the notion that DC movies suck, Supergirl now has to break the notion that female superhero movies suck. This movie is especially important because female lead superhero movies have been neglected in cinema for decades. Did you know that people were so apprehensive about women in superhero movies that the first time that we ever saw Wonder Woman in a theatrical movie was in the Lego movie from 2014? I kid you not. People were so against female superheroes that the first time we ever saw Wonder Woman in the big screen was in a Lego movie. Of course, later on she actually had her own movie, and it was pretty well received. And since then she's been in a ton of movies. Most of them suck, but oh well, at least she's in them. So, superpowered women have had it very rough when it comes to being adapted into the big screen. At first, people didn't want to adapt them. Then, when they were given the chance to be adapted, people didn't actually put care or effort into adapting them, which ended up making them look bad, which did more harm than good. And that's why the Supergirl movie is so crucial, because it is its job to change this poor perception that people have of these types of movies on the big screen. Yes, Wonder Woman from 2017 did help a little bit with that, because it was well received, but since then, people have changed their perception of Gal Gadot because they realized that she couldn't act. And then the whole universe that Wonder Woman belonged to died shortly after. So now it's up to DC to redefine what women at the forefront of superhero films stand for in the big screen, starting with Supergirl. Now, I have no doubt in my mind that the Supergirl movie will be a cinematic masterpiece. But as the box office has been proving for years, just because a movie is good, it doesn't guarantee that it will do well financially. Let's grab another example from Marvel itself. People have been saying that Thunderbolts is one of the best Marvel movies that they have made in recent years. Among all the trash that they have put out there, Thunderbolts gave them hope that Marvel was still able to make good movies, and that it wasn't all lost. So how come then that if people are saying that Thunderbolts is the best Marvel movie in years, how come it's the worst performing superhero movie of the year? The answer to that is, Marvel have been doing so many terrible projects for so long that by the time they actually made a good project, by the time the quality of the movies increased again, people had already left. Let me illustrate my point further with a little metaphor. Imagine you go into a bakery and you buy a cake from there, and then you actually eat the cake and it tastes like shit. Then the bakery is like, okay, but taste this other cake, it's much better. Then you taste the new cake and it still tastes like shit. Then the bakery goes, no, but taste this other cake. This other cake is definitely better. And then you taste the other cake and it still tastes like shit. By that point, you have already formed a perception of the cakes from that particular bakery. You think this bakery's cakes taste like shit. So if eventually they come out and say, actually this time we made a cake that actually tastes good, we made a cake that is actually delicious and you're gonna love it, you're gonna be a lot more hesitant to try it because of how many times you've been let down before. Because you've already heard before how they wanted you to keep tasting their cakes and they continue to taste terrible. So even if by then they made the best and most delicious cake of the year, people aren't going to be as willing to try it because they've been let down so many times before that they stopped trusting the bakery. That's basically what happened with Thunderbolts. People had been let down so many times by Marvel before that by the time they actually managed to make something good, people didn't trust them anymore, and they didn't go watch it. So Thunderbolts is paying the consequences of the actions of previous movie. People say Thunderbolts is awesome, but that didn't translate into profitability, because Marvel's reputation by that point was so damaged that people weren't willing to give it a chance anymore. Well, that's what concerns me about Supergirl, because I have no doubt in my mind that the movie will be a masterpiece. But now I'm concerned that people's perception of women superhero movies is so damaged that they won't be willing to give Supergirl a chance. I'm concerned that they will just brush it off as just another one of those terrible movies, without giving it a proper chance, just like what they did with Thunderbolts. So I think Supergirl has just as much pressure as Superman did. Superman had to put up with years of failed DC movies that gave people the idea that DC movies in general suck. It had to prove to the audiences that DC was still able to make good movies, after almost a decade of making terrible ones. And now Supergirl has to prove to people that it is in fact possible to make good superhero movies with female protagonists, and change people's preconceived notions that those types of movies tend to suck. And if Supergirl manages to pull that off, it could redefine what heroines represent in cinema. They will no longer be perceived as these arrogant narcissists who just want you to adore them merely for existing, but instead they will finally be perceived as just part of the group. Because if Supergirl succeeds and then Wonder Woman follows and is able to perform just as well, then DC will become the go-to place for female lead superheroes, which will open the door for even more projects of this kind. And it will prove that it wasn't that women couldn't be protagonists in superhero movies, Marvel just didn't know how to do it right. And they will finally be able to stand not just as companions or complements for the male superheroes, but as their own heroes who can be admired and beloved, instead of hated and despised. If Supergirl manages to earn people's trust in female superheroes, then Wonder Woman will have a far better chance at succeeding, which subsequently will allow DC to continue growing and thriving. So Supergirl has her hands full, but now let's look at the other side with Marvel. So Marvel hasn't been doing great recently. This became the least profitable year for Marvel in a very long time, and it all comes down to the cake metaphor that I brought up earlier. People don't trust Marvel anymore. It seems that Marvel has been improving in its last few movies. Both Thunderbolts and Fantastic Four were highly praised. Problem now is that people aren't watching those movies anymore, and I've already explained why. They made terrible movies for so long that people weren't willing to give these movies a chance, even if the movies are good. Fantastic Four only managed to earn $500 million, which isn't terrible, but you have to understand that back in the day, Marvel's worst performing movies would still earn at least $700 million. So while Fantastic Four isn't a complete failure, it's still performing under what the company had grown used to. And the reason why that's a problem is because Doomsday budget is so ridiculously huge that it needs an insane amount of money to be considered profitable. The reason why the previous Avengers movies had worked so well and they made so much money was because they were held together by an army of superheroes, which made everyone want to check the movie. They had the Avengers, the Guardians of the Galaxy, Ant-Man, Black Panther, Spiderman. Everybody had a hero that they wanted to watch in the big screen. And the problem with Doomsday is that it's going to be mostly made up of heroes that people don't really care about. Only half of the cast has been revealed so far, but the people who have been revealed so far aren't really doing a great job at getting people excited the way they were for both Infinity War and Endgame. So far we have confirmed the Fantastic Four, which, as I said, it's not that it failed, but not as many people went to watch it as they used to before Endgame, and that's gonna make it harder to get people excited over seeing them again in another movie. Then we have the Thunderbolts, which nobody watched, so again it's hard to get people excited over them. Then we have Captain America, which underperformed, the X-Men, which I know nothing about, and that's the problem, because if people don't know these characters or don't like them, then it's very hard to get people excited over this event. And people are concerned because we are seeing the very real possibility of an Avengers movie underperforming for the first time in the history of the company. And that is where Spider-Man comes into play. Doomsday, because Spider-Man is the last chance that Marvel has at getting people excited over Avengers Doomsday again. And that in itself is a problem, because before you had an entire universe of characters holding the entire MCU together, now they only have Spider-Man. Spider-Man is struggling to hold together the entire MCU by himself, and now the future of the entire company hangs from his web. And you might be thinking, but Spider-Man has always been a financial success. I don't even think that there's even a possibility that it underperforms. And that's true, but the thing is that Marvel is in such a dire state that even a financial success from Spider-Man might not be enough, because now Spider-Man doesn't just need to succeed, it needs to succeed and get people excited enough about Doomsday that it keeps the movie from becoming the first Avengers movie to fail financially. Spider-Man has to do all the work in one movie to get people just as excited as they were for previous Avengers movies. Basically, with just one movie, Spider-Man has to spark the same excitement for Doomsday that Marvel would usually spend 5 or 6 films building towards. And that's a very difficult task even for a superhero as successful as Spider-Man. Plus, remember, Disney doesn't fully own Spider-Man, so whatever amount of money the movie ends up making, Disney won't keep all of it. They will keep a portion and they'll have to share it with Sony, who is still the primary owner of Spider-Man, which is why a success from Spider-Man might not even be enough to save the MCU, because this movie will do well, that's for sure. But now it needs to do so spectacularly well that it's able to make up for Marvel's past mishaps and get enough people excited over Doomsday that the movie won't be a complete failure. And that's going to be Spider-Man Brand New Day's real challenge. Now, Spider-Man is particularly strong when it comes to popularity. Marvel released just a teaser of the new Spider-Man suit, and the internet went insane over it. Then they revealed pictures and footage of the new suit, and the internet completely lost it. This is basically the equivalent of getting praised just for showing up. And I don't know of any other superhero who is able to break the internet so easily with so little. Just about a week before they revealed Spider-Man's new suit, DC revealed the first poster of Supergirl, and nobody even flinched. So Spider-Man is not up against an impossible task, but it is a very difficult one. Now, the Spider-Man strategy is working on me personally, because ever since it was stated that Brand New Day would take place one day before Doomsday, I was immediately like, oh yeah, I gotta watch Doomsday. Whatever it ends up being, I need to know the resolution of this story. So I'm definitely watching Doomsday just because of Spider-Man. Then they said, Yelena will show up in Brand New Day. And I was like, oh well, now I gotta watch Thunderbolts because I need to understand where she's at for when she shows up in Spider-Man. Then they said, and it's possible that they will explore the friendship between Spider-Man and Johnny Storm. And I was like, well, now I gotta watch Fantastic Four to understand that character better. Because what if they become friends in Doomsday? So you see, this strategy is working on me. Now the question becomes, will it work on everybody else? Because they're gonna need a heck ton of people to watch that movie if they want it to be profitable, because that budget is everything but tiny. Now, I've seen many people discuss about whether or not they think that Doomsday will be able to be a success or if it's doomed to be the first failed Avengers movie. Half the people I've heard think it's doomed to fail, and the other half still have hope that it will be able to save itself. So right now, I think it's a 50-50. I see both outcomes as equally as possible. Basically, right now, Doomsday is a coin flip that is up in the air, and we are yet to see whether it will land on heads or tails. So here's what I propose. We'll see 2 huge superhero films, Supergirl and Spider-Man Brand New Day. Fans tend to treat Marvel and DC like rivals, like one has to defeat the other. But that doesn't have to be the case. In reality, both franchises can thrive together, and in this case, I would say we have a far better chance working together than trying to defeat each other. This year we had Fantastic Four and Superman releasing together, and some people who went to the theaters to watch and support both called it super fantastic. So next year we'll have Supergirl and Spider-Man. These two don't have to be rivals. If we support both movies, both franchises have a far better chance at success. And here's where I propose an initiative I call Web of Steel, where we should watch both Supergirl and Spider-Man to support both franchises. And I know they're considering moving Supergirl to May, but I'm still calling it Web of Steel. And here's why the success of one doesn't have to mean the failure of the other, but in fact the complete opposite. As I've already explained in this video, Spider-Man basically has to carry all the hype for Doomsday by itself. But what if he doesn't have to be alone? Yes, I know that Supergirl won't directly cause hype for Doomsday because she's not part of the MCU. But think about this. If her movie is successful, it can revive the hype for superhero movies, which will indirectly boost Spider-Man, which will subsequently help Doomsday. And as I said, yes, Spider-Man will do well regardless, but it needs to do more than well. And because of that, it needs all the help it can get. And think of it this way. Supergirl may not be part of the MCU, but if people watch Supergirl and they love it, and then they watch Spider-Man and they love it too, then they'll probably think, wow, I watched 2 superhero movies this year and I like them both. That's gonna make people way more likely to want to check Doomsday, even if Supergirl isn't directly part of it. And likewise, the hype for both Spider-Man and Doomsday, if we manage to get some, is likely to boost the hype for future DC projects too. Secret Wars, which is basically the sequel to Doomsday, and Man of Tomorrow, which is the sequel to Superman, come out the same year in 2027. So both companies have a far better chance of success if we as fans support both projects together, rather than fighting over which one won. Because yes, Spider-Man will be far more successful than Supergirl, that's inevitable. But again, this doesn't have to be a competition. Supergirl can be a boost for Spider-Man and vice versa. So that's why I propose Web of Steel for 2026, even if both movies don't end up coming out together. This doesn't have to be I'm a DC fan so I want Marvel to fail, nor I want Marvel to succeed therefore I won't support Supergirl. I think these movies have a far better chance at success together than they will ever have separately. So in the end, this doesn't have to be about choosing sides. It's about realizing that both of these movies can lift each other up. Supergirl has the chance to change the way people see heroines on the big screen, and Spider-Man has the chance to remind everyone why superhero movies became a phenomenon in the first place. Alone, each movie carries huge pressure, but together they can help rebuild trust in the genre and make superhero cinema exciting again. That's why I believe 2026 and subsequent years don't need to be Marvel versus DC. It can be Marvel and DC. I know Web of Steel won't be for everyone. There will be people who will prefer one side over the other. But I do believe that together we can accomplish more than we can accomplish separately.